Hello, welcome to podcast 14 with a very special guest. It's none other than...
Very special.
It's none other than Chris Mcglade, internationally renowned comedian, poet now.
Poet, yeah.
I don't know what other talents he has, but thank you.
Porn star.
Porn star as well. Thank you for
animals and dogs.
Fair play to you. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do what you want here. It's quite a... We have our own principality.
Are we right now? Are we right? I've got for go to the shop. I've just passed pub called Birding Than, Castle on Thill and Summit Tate.
No, that's Summit to 8.
Summit Tate. It's Summit Tate.
The Summit to 8. You have to fucking cook your own steak on the fucking hot plate on the table. I couldn't be fucked with that, mate. It's a bit cheeky there, and it's charging you £30 difference.
Why is that? Because of the COVID-19?
No, it's just a fucking. It's one of these.
I wish you wouldn't swear so much.
It's one of these edgy. It's one of these edgy things where you can, it's a novelty. So they've done it.
I once saw a program on the television. Me and our lads were watching it. Like, we couldn't believe it. And these like upper middle class lunatics in London, right? And they were lunatics because they had to be lunatics to pay for this shit. They were ants, right?
Ants.
They were feeding in this top-notch restaurant. They were feeding them live ants, right? As like a starter or a main course. And they were going, "Oh, this is absolutely lovely, isn't it?" I'm thinking, what?
It's daft cunts, aren't they?
I know.
They want a good harding, I think.
Arty-farty, innit?
They want a fucking good hard.
I wouldn't condone violence.
No, don't. Chris doesn't condone anything like that, you know what I mean? But
I'm not condoning violence in any way, shape or form.
There's some fucking weirdos in London. I mean, in Shoreditch, didn't they have a cornflake bar where you could go in and have any cereal you wanted? These hipsters. But it was like 10 quid for a bowl of fucking Cocoa Pops. You know what I mean? But somebody called Crispin with a wax moustache and like fucking anchors and swallows all over behind kids with the dungarees on, saying like, what would you like, Frosties? Or would you like the Ugandan Cocoa Pops?
The thing is, right, contrary to common belief, right, Jimmy has invited me down to do the speaking, but he's just obviously taken over. Just let him go on a flight of fancy.
No, I'm sorry, Chris, I forgot.
The man...
You're the one with 70 million views.
The man, right... I love Jimmy, right? A lot of people think he's an arsehole, but I think he's a very, very talented comedian, and he doesn't get a fair press. That's why I've come down here today.
Thank you very much, Chris.
You're welcome.
I call you Crass then. Thank you very much, Chris. It's because I'm nervous in your presence. But
stupid. First time I made breakfast for you.
First time I found out about you was on Hindley Car Boot down the road, and I saw Colin. Have we got that video?
No, do not show that load of shite.
You won't be able to see it through the lighting. We'll have to put V-mix it in after if you can. It's True Blue, and this is when I was doing stand-up and I was looking for material to steal.
Yeah.
And I saw this on Hindley Car Boot and I watched it, and this is the first time I came across you.
We did that, that was about 1994.
1994 you did that.
Yeah, I was with... a bloke in Wales called Kevin King, who was a manager stroke agent of mine. Loved him dearly, and he managed to get two major video companies interested in doing a thing. I've been going like 4 or 5 years then, and it wasn't like comedy wasn't like it is now. I mean, in them days it was like no comedy clubs hardly. They were all just like pubs, clubs, working men's clubs. This kind of thing. Anyway, so I was a stag comedian, a poor man's Chubby Brown, really. And
is that what was the thing with the eye patch?
Well, what happened there? I had this eye disease called iritis.
It's true
story. I had this eye disease called iritis, and it was like part of my eye was swelling on the inside and touching another part of my eye, and the pain was excruciating. So they had to stick a needle in my eye, right, to like a steroid injection and stuff. And I couldn't have any light in my eye, so I had to put the eye patch on. Of course, I went on stage like that, and then I thought I kind of built the black and white outfit around that, like, you know what I mean? I
just had to clear it up in case anybody gets hold of a copy and thinks you're an Illuminati shill, like you signed up to the Illuminati and then they found out you put your poem, and that's why it's gone viral and things like that.
No.
So you was the mainstream comedian kind of thing. You're doing the rough pubs and all that, and that's where
still
you
do. What's wrong with that?
No, there's nothing wrong with that. You learn that's the best place for a comedian to learn the craft.
Listen, it's one of these, right? I've been a comedian for 32 years, right? And these days, the comedy circuit. That's what comedians aspire to, right? They think that that's it, right? For me, without being disrespectful, they put themselves in a bubble of that comedy circuit on a bill with other comedians, and they're all, you know, telling the same jokes and on the same kind of jokes, or, you know, they all come from the same standpoint politically, you know. Not that they're telling the same jokes; it's the same kind of material, I think. But they wouldn't be able to go into a working men's club and play a working men's club audience. They'll be able. I've seen them go into like working men's clubs on like comedy. They're starting to put comedy nights in working men's clubs. You know what I mean? But that's a completely different entity to like a proper working men's club audience or a pub audience, or like working with strippers and stuff like this. You know?
Yeah.
And I haven't. I mean, I've gone into every kind of situation with as far as audiences goes. For 32 years, from pubs, clubs, stag nights, hen nights, party nights, you know, cabaret nights in social clubs, working men's club nights, presentation dues, sportsmen's dinners, and then I've also took myself onto the comedy circuit and done my stuff there, and given my political views to the, you know, the for want of a better thing, metropolitan, middle class, PC, liberal left kind of crowd. Do you know what I mean? And I think as a comedian, you shouldn't just get embroiled or involved in one style of working or one kind of audience. Do you know what I mean? Or one kind of situation. I think you should like get out there and do it all. Like, you know,
it's
what I mean?
Kind of like MMA in the sense.
I don't know what MMA is.
You know, mixed martial arts, where they take they take a bit from every kind of combat to use, kind of thing.
It's just being a pro. It's like listen. It's like working. It's just like working your audience and knowing how to work. Probably my best pal in comedy was a comedian called Bobby Knoxall from Sunderland. I love the bones of the man. And I worked with him one night and he loved me. He said, "I love you because you got bowels, son." He's from Sunderland, you got bowels, lad. And he took me under his wing and he said, "It's important for you to be able to play as many kind of audiences as you can. Yeah. You know, don't just like play one kind of audience, you've got to play them all."
Yeah.
And I love to make people laugh, and I love to, you know what I mean, I like to stretch myself. I like to go into different situations that I'm not quite comfortable with. You know, even this thing with like writing poems, I've always written poems for my own enjoyment. But I wrote The Right to Hate, and I put it out there, and it went viral of its own accord, like 3 years after I'd written it. And all of a sudden people say, "Well, where's more of your stuff?" You know, and I thought to myself, well, okay then. So I've started to write more. It's like poetry on demand kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. But where was the transition from just a normal mainstream comedian, sometimes doing a lot of borrowed gags? I know you probably did your own as well, but like the mainstream thing, they want on the mainstream crowd really want like a lot of old jokes and things like that.
No, they love it. That's what. But it doesn't matter as long as you make people laugh.
No, not at all. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that. My point is, where did you make the transition from being like getting more like conscious with your comedy and more political than rather than just going doing jokes?
Well,
what was the point?
Right, so I started this political campaign in Redcar, where I live, against our council letting Persimmon Homes build out houses on our coastline, and the whole thing was flawed and potentially corrupted from the outset. Okay. And I just felt instinctively that there was something wrong with it. So I started this political campaign in Redcar in 2004 against that. People think I was starting a campaign to stop the houses. Well, I suppose I was, but more than that, right? I was trying to stop the corruption that was taking place. Do you know what I mean? Because, you know, and in the end, after the 6-year campaign, we beat them in the House of Lords, changed the law in the country, but we also exposed all the potential corruption that was there, right? And the main protagonists were jumping like rats from a sinking ship to try and get out the council, and the council never really got over that. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And our council had committed like millions of pounds of public money, right, to be spent on things which were the sole responsibility of Persimmon Homes, the developer, you know. Okay. And it was that I was actually standing up against. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, we beat them in the March 2010, and I hadn't done any comedy for like 6 years. Basically, I'd done the odd gig over 6 years, but nothing. So I was like completely cold. But I thought to myself, right, I've got to get back in the ball game. But after seeing like 6 years and coming like face to face with all this really shady, dodgy stuff that local authorities do, like our friends in the north kind of thing. I saw that like what goes on a local level is going on a national and international level. They're like a mirror image of each other.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, well, okay, I couldn't stand it, because they'd put me through the ringer. When I was fighting the campaign, it was like all the lies and the smears. I had death threats, hate mail.
I was going to ask you that.
That come from the council, and the police all knew about it, and the police took no action. The council were using the police as their own militia, to try and put the frighteners on me, and I'd been through all that, and I thought to myself, this is wrong. So when I started to get back into my comedy in 2010, I thought, well, I've got to start, speaking about this stuff in my act. Do you know what I mean? Or the injustice that like I kind of see. Because like, listen, I'm a comprehensively educated bit of northeastern gammon, thick as fuck, right? Never stepped foot in a college or a university in anger in my life, right? So when I finished the campaign, because like when I finished school at 16 years old, I was straight into a steel mill.
Yeah.
Okay, that was it. I wanted to go to an acting academy in Middlesbrough, in Linthorpe, and our dad said, if you go to some fucking puffy acting class, son, because I just got my job at British Steel and it was the start of Thatcher's recession. So he said, if you pack your job in to go to some puffy acting class, I'm finished with you. So I bowed to that one because I was only 16, and straight into the steel mills. Like, so I wasn't when we finished the campaign in 2010, and I'd seen the level of corruption and stuff that was taking place. I had this thirst,
Yeah.
Like I wanted to know about everything. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to know about Zionism, and I wanted to know about Palestine, and I wanted to know about the IRA, and I wanted to know about terrorism, and I wanted to know about South Africa, and I wanted to know about all this stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I used to go on the computer all the time, looking at far-right sites and far-left sites and conspiracy theory sites and mainstream sites, and I was looking at the lot, trying to educate myself. And it's been like, maybe it's like really like, when I think about it, maybe it's a 10, 12, 13 year journey that I've got. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's basically where I am now. So like I've got myself a fair idea of what I think's going on in the world, and I see like the 1%. These people are the ones who have everything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They're the doers and the shakers, and it's globalism, and they have our politicians in our pocket, in their pockets, and our politicians are just the same as the council on Persimmon Homes, right? Persimmon Homes are our council in the pocket. These globalists, these massive companies, the banks and the oil companies and the Starbucks and the Amazons and all of them, they have our politicians in their pockets.
Yeah.
And it's now time, right, that people said, now fuck this. We're the ones that elect you. You represent us. You don't represent them. And that's a problem with the Labour Party, you see. Because the Labour Party now would much prefer to represent these people than they would us. And that's why in 2017, the Labour Party, top brass, and this is the truth. I mean, and it's in the press, but the press tried to keep it down as much as they possibly could. But the Labour Party hierarchy actually plotted to throw a general election in order to oust Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, well, hang on, there was working class people at the bottom end of the scale, right, who would have absolutely benefited from that socialist manifesto in 2017. And bear in mind, they only lost by about 3,000 votes. The Labour Party nearly took the election, right? If these people hadn't tried to subvert that election, they would have got in. And that's how much the Labour Party doesn't care about working class people anymore, because they were prepared to throw a general election, right, when those working class people at the bottom would have benefited from those socialist... that socialist manifesto. They were prepared to throw that just so they could get rid of their anti-globalist leader. Yeah. And that's why I'll never vote Labour again until they start to represent us again.
I saw something. Perhaps Colin can find it on his phone. Did you get accused of anti-Semitism?
I got accused of
for the poem Right to Wait because you mentioned Rothschilds.
I got accused of anti-Semitism, right? Because I mentioned the Rothschilds, and the thing was there the line about the Rothschilds wasn't against the Rothschilds, right? And it wasn't against the Jewish, right? Because like my old agent, Mcglade, he's Jewish. He's a Zionist. I love him to bits. Last year when I was in Edinburgh, he got his daughters to, like his 3 little girls, to send me a video of singing Happy Birthday. It made me cry. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You know, he's part of what they call the CAA, which is the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism.
Okay.
I was with him when I wrote The Right to Hate. I was under his management. Do you know what I mean? He was my agent. The line about the Rothschilds in that poem, right, wasn't attacking the Rothschilds or the Jewish, right? It was attacking the mindset, that progressive liberal mindset that brands anybody, right, anybody anti-Semitic for even going through the thought process. Because like I say, when I started the campaign in 2010, I had this knowledge, or this thirst for knowledge, and wanted to know all sorts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I say, and Michael has admitted, you know, both the far left and the far right have no love of Zionism, you know. And I'll be honest with you, I looked at it and they were both saying, oh, well, you know, the Zionists control banking. And I was seduced by that, because, like I say, I've not had any great, like, education or anything like that. I was educating myself.
Yeah.
So, like, I was seduced by that for a time. But then you look at it and you think, well, hang on a minute. How can Zionism, like, control banking when you've got like Barclays and you've got like JP Morgan and you've got like Lloyds, you know, they're not Jewish. So you realise that that's like a load of shit. Do you know what I mean? But there's still the thought process of like the Rothschilds being the richest banking family in the world. So how can they not have an influence over world banking? How can they not have an influence over world finance? Do you know what I mean? And it was that you get attacked for even going through that thought process of thinking, well, because I try and put things together all the time. Do you know what I mean?
The thing is, you know, I've been a victim of political correctness too. You know, I'm not going to go into that, but the old mechanism of political correctness is just designed to shut you. If you had a valid point against a certain,
and they can't beat you, then they'll brand you.
Yeah, then you're just branded, and then most people go, I'm not racist, I'm not homophobic, I'm not anti-Semitic. So it's kind of a great tool, political correctness, to just shut down debate. And argument. And now it's getting fucking silly where they're removing Uncle Ben off packets and things like that, you know. The Black Lives Matter thing is funded by George Soros and the globalists, and it's all about divide and conquer.
Well, you see, once again, you know, I know what I see with my own eyes, right?
Yeah.
And Black Lives Matter, and I've had conversations with black people who've said they are a Marxist political group. Okay? How I view Black Lives... Do Black Lives Matter? Of course Black Lives Matter, right?
Yeah.
And I support Black Lives Mattering. But what I don't support, right, is a political group like Black Lives Matter who are stirring up their own community in order to cause even more division and segregation. Yeah. And I think that's what their agenda is.
Of course. People need to realise, to the globalists, no life matters, no race matters.
I don't think these people in control give a toss about any of us.
No.
I don't think they give a toss about black. I don't think they give a toss about white. I think, as I've seen, you know, over the years, the left-right paradigm has just been another way of divide and conquer. You look at Brexit was another method of divide and conquer. Even COVID-19.
Masks, no masks.
Masks, no masks. Fear, no fear. Yeah. You know what I mean? You know, you've got all this division all the time, and it suits their purposes to have us all divided. Black Lives Matter, anti-Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
White Lives Matter. You see, do you understand what I'm saying? Black Lives pop up. All of a sudden, you got White Lives Matter pop up, and you got more. And what it is, it's like it's a manipulation of the working classes. People say, "Oh, you've always banging on about the working classes," but the working classes, right, are the majority socioeconomic demographic in the world, right? Yeah. And that's why they keep the working classes divided and conquered all the time. Because if working class people got even a whiff, and more, I like to see, or I like to think that working class people are starting to wake up, right?
Yeah.
But if more and more working class people got a whiff that they were being played by people who were using our politicians, right, then they'd all rise up and say, we've had enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's true. Do you think in comedy that the working classes are kind of again excluded now?
Of course, yeah. Well, you see, it's one of them, isn't it? Right? I say, of course, yeah, and then all of a sudden you'll get somebody who's like a working class background, been to university on that comedy circuit, and they'll say, "Well, I'm working class," you know. Yeah, but you might be, but you're buying into that middle class, progressive, liberal style of working.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You ask yourself this, right? Because of course there's working class comedians on that circuit, but ask yourself this: how many of those working class comedians are actually working in that working class style, that old working class middle mainstream, middle of the road?
Yeah.
You know what they call old school now. They call it old school. Yeah. How many? When was the last time you saw a working men's club comedian walk out on the stage live at the Apollo? When was the last time you saw a comedian from a working men's club working on Mock the Week or The Last Leg or any? You'll never see it, right? No. All you see is in the main, right, on TV, middle class comedians of that progressive liberal mindset, right, who are all coming from the same direction politically, right? And on the same on the comedy circuit. And I just think, I don't know, you know, for me comedy should challenge, and I don't think I think they're all you know, they're not challenging enough. They're all saying the same things, you know. When I go down to the comedy circuit in London, I like to think that I stand out because I say what's in my art, not somebody else's. Yeah. You know, whether you love me or you loathe me, you know. But I know there's no meanness, there's no nastiness, there's no malice here behind me.
I've kind of seen a lot of, when I've done stuff on circuits in Manchester, I've seen a lot of the younger comedians now. They'll go on stage and they'll spend the first 3 minutes of their act ticking boxes saying, I'm not racist. Yeah. I'm not gay. So all they're doing basically is saying, look, it's okay. I'm one of you. I'm you know what I mean? And there's that kind of thing. I've been backstage at Comedy Store. I've never done professional work there, but I did the open spots for them and things like that. I'm sat around with these comedians. Obviously, you're excluded to one side because you're not, because I was just an open spot. But these people weren't like me. They look like accountants, or you know, and they're talking about snowboarding and fucking holidays in France and things like that. And you're thinking, these people aren't like me. You know what I mean? And it has changed. And I think with that comment. There's a writer in there, a Jewish writer called Ivor Dembina, who spoke extensively about it.
I've worked for Ivor. Ivor as Camden Comedy Club above this pub called the Camden Head in London, and it's a fantastic comedy night. It's you know, and the audiences are all in the main, right? Your progressive, liberal, left mindset kind of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the night is a fantastic night, and I've played his comedy club loads of times. Yeah. There's probably a queue as long as your arm, like performance wise, to get in on the gig. But he put an article out in Chortle, and he said basically, you know, there's like a hatred more or less of working class people or working class comedians by that progressive liberal left, you know, and he's part of that thing himself. Yeah. You know, it's a great article. If you go on Chortle, put Ivor Dembina a Chortle, working class.
I'll put a link below.
Yeah, and it's you know, and there is that. I feel as though it's like they're like look down the nose. That's how I get. Maybe it's just me with an inferiority complex. No. I don't know, but that's the kind of thing, and I think it is a discrimination. Nobody wants to talk about it, right? Nobody wants to talk about class in this country, and I do, right? Because everybody's going on about discrimination in all its forms, whether it be like discrimination based on race or gender or sex or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But nobody wants to talk about class discrimination. Yeah. And I used the thing from you at my Edinburgh show, because I did 2018, I did a show called Northern Monkey, which was about how working class people are discriminated against in this country, and how, especially like northern working class people, are viewed by middle class people, and it was critically acclaimed across the board. But Jimmy, he sent me this casting call. I wish he had it with me now, but Jimmy sent me a casting call from this casting agent in Manchester, and they were casting for this this new like comedy drama, and they said basically, I can't remember the exact wording, but what it was that they were looking for people.
It was like they said
Joe Gilligan, I think.
Oh, it was that Brassic thing.
Brassic.
I think, but they said, I think the word it was, your headshots are all lovely, but we need...
They're too polished.
We need to, yeah.
You need to. What they said was, your heads, the 10x8s that we hold for you are way too polished. Could you... and this is what it said, right, by the way. It said, would you take a selfie of yourself and try to look... Are you ready for this? Try to look as council estate as possible. That's what it said. And I was fucking incensed, right?
I was fucking livid.
I was absolutely livid, right? Because my daughter and my grandchildren and my daughter's partner all lived on a council estate. I know loads of people who've lived on council estates, right? And like, what are they saying? That all council estate people are walking around like scruffy twats with their asses hanging out and all this, you know what I mean? No, but do you know what I mean, Dewey? And it was that kind of condescending attitude. And I went through the fucking roof, right? Absolutely. And it's like a class discrimination. This is what working class people are, whether you're black or you're white. This is what working class people are having to put up with and deal with. You know, they all made for me, all this white privilege thing, right? It's rubbish, right? Because my family, 120, 130 years ago, were all running around Northern Ireland with no fucking shoes on. You know, they were in essence white slaves, because the man at the top was just looking at them. You know, the same as people in plantations in America were looking at black people.
Yeah.
You know, they had fuck all. And I looked at I did this live video on my Facebook page when all the Black Lives Matter riots and everything started in America and in this country. And I talked about Marcus Rashford. You know, Marcus Rashford, for me, he wants knighting because he got those working class kids school dinners through the holidays. And a lot, and I know teachers, and they said a lot of working class kids, they go to school, they don't get no fucking... When they go to school, that's the only meal that they get of the day. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the parents, it's a relief for them to go to school because they know they're going to get fed at school. So Marcus Rashford getting working class bairns, kids, like food vouchers and a meal throughout the school holidays, for me, he should be knighted, right? But the only reason that Marcus Rashford was listened to, right, was because he was a rich, multi-millionaire, Man United and English footballer, right? If he'd have been just a working class lad, whether it was black or white, his email wouldn't have even got to Boris Johnson. Do you know what I mean?
No.
What I'm saying is privilege and how far you can go in your life is based on how much money you've got.
I've got something interesting. A lad that you design is a graphic designer.
Well, that's what I believe, by the way.
It's right. But a lad that you designs their thumbnails for us, and he's also a writer. He's just wrote a book, and he's been turned down by really big publishing houses, and they've said to him, and he's not even working class. They've said the main problem we've got with your book is that you're white, middle-aged, and middle class. You're white. The main problem with his book is that. I'm not being funny. If he was a black lesbian in a wheelchair, it's a really good book he's wrote, kind of thing. But it's not just working class, but it's mostly working class. But it's white males are kind of looked down upon now, and they're like kind of vilified.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's the truth or not. I just see it as being a working class thing. I don't think working class people get a shake, black and white. You know, we're all the people at the bottom. We don't get a fair shout. Do you know what I mean?
No. Do you know the older style of working in comedy? You know, in the old school, like you learning your craft in clubs and things like that. It was much fairer because the clubs had paid this new fledgling act's expenses. You know what I mean? To go to the club.
Listen, when I first started in comedy, it was as simple as this, right? You went there, you got your booking. The agent got you the booking. You went and got your booking, right? And you were on, say, 150 quid, 200 quid for your gig, right? Excuse me. There was none of this like open mic spot. You know, you do 10 open mic spots to prove yourself, right? And then if you got like a semi decent response on all of them, right? Then you got yourself a 10-minute or a 5-minute progression spot, which give you like 10 quid expenses. And this is the process. It's ridiculous. That's how it is in comedy clubs now. When I first started, you were booked to appear and you were expected to have an act, right? Yeah. And you did your 45 minutes or your hour to a hard-working men's club audience, right? And you got your money. And if you were shite, they paid you off. And if you were good, you did your time, right? Yeah. And then they asked you back in 6 months to a year's time. And it didn't matter whether you went and had the same act because they weren't bothered. Yeah. You know what I mean? All they want to do is just laugh. And that's how it goes. But like I remember being in Ivor Dembina's place, and this a few years ago, and there was a young lad trying to set up like a comedians union, because he said, you know, basically comedians on that comedy circuit are getting discriminated against. You know, they're getting the piss taken out of them
completely.
You know, they're going all over the country doing 10-minute open spots and not getting paid for it. But who's making money on the gig?
They're that eager and keen to do it.
Exactly.
You'll get. Like fucking, I've got a gig in Portsmouth. I can give you 10 quid for petrol, and people will fucking snap it up. But if all the comedians starting out just turned around and said, "No, fuck off. We want at least expenses." Oh, we
I had the same
something.
I was in Billy Elliot in the West End.
Yeah.
In 2010 till 2011, right? And when I was in Billy Elliot, I think it was. Wills and what's her names? Prince William and his wife. What's her name? Kate. Right, yeah, they were getting married, right? So for their wedding, I think it was a national holiday. Everybody got a day off, right? Apart from people in the theatre. So Equity, right, said, "Oh well, we're gonna have like a ballot for like strike action and everything, right? Or industrial action. We call it industrial action because Equity is the union." And because, you know, if we're not going to get a day off the same as everybody else, we want like a day in lieu or, you know, an extra day's pay and this and that and the other. So they had the ballot, right? And the ballot was in favour of strike action. And Equity turned around and said, yeah, but we're going to ignore that now. We're not going to listen to it because at the end of the day, not many people took part in the ballot. Well, what's all that about? Do you know what I mean? What is that all about? Yeah. You had the ballot. Right, the people who voted all voted in favour, right? And basically, what it is it's that same mentality. The people who own the theatres, the people who are like, you know, like your Cameron McIntoshes and all of them, right? They all know that actors will absolutely kill to be in the West End, right? Yeah. So they can treat the people, the actors and everything, like shite.
Mill owners, aren't they, basically?
Yeah, and that's what it is. That is exactly what it is, right? And it's the same thing with comedy, because they know that these young people who have like trained at Lambda or whatever it is, some performing arts academy, they're so desperate to get out there. They're so desperate to be involved in the West End that they don't want to do anything. They would actually pay to be in that position. That's how desperate they are. You know, that's how much they love it. And it's just the same. And so they're getting exploited, right? And the people who own the theatres and the agencies and everything else, they're taking the piss out of them. You know, Equity. After that, I took myself out of the union. And in every situation, I've been in the ISTC when I worked at British Steel, when I was a fitters mate at ICI, I was in the Transport and General Workers Union. And so, like, when I started my comedy, I wanted to be part of a union. I'm a trade unionist, so I wanted to be part of a union. Yeah. But I withdrew my Equity subs after that carry on in the theatre because I thought to myself, well, you're not worth a wank, are you really? You know what I mean? You know, Equity should have said, well, hang on, we've had a ballot. You know what I mean? But they were actually on the same side as the people who were owning the theatres and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So I withdrew my equity, and it's the same thing with the people who own the comedy clubs or who are organising the comedy nights. They know that there's like comedy is the new rock and roll, isn't it? Has been for years.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of people. To a lot of people, it's like a fast track to fame and fortune, even though they can't do it. You know. And so these people who own the comedy clubs and who own put on the comedy nights, they know that.
Yeah.
And so they take the piss out of them.
Of course, completely. I mean, the Comedy Store, I won the King Kong thing twice. You get 50 quid for that. Then you're rewarded 10 minutes free on a professional night. I did 10 of these 10 spots, right? And then I pulled this 20-odd-year-old sound tech up. And I said, when do I progress to paid work? Because I'd not had a bad one.
No.
Some were really good. Some were all right, but I didn't die on my ass once. And I pulled this kid up. He was in his 20s and he was a sound tech. He kind of like had the casting vote on how you did. He said, well, I don't think you're as good as the other comedians yet. You know what I mean? And you just think...
Yeah, but comedy is a subjective thing. Who was that?
No, but the thing is, I was. You know, I know I was. And I'd sat in the audience.
I've seen those videos.
I'd sat in the audience and seen professional comedians do shit at the Comedy Store. And I know I'd done better than them. But it's like, you're not good. It's all about jumping through hoops. It's about compliance. Is it compliant? No. And if you're a bit of a maverick in any way, I've said this before, they would rather have somebody less talented and more compliant.
They want to control the content, and that's fair enough if it's their club, but it doesn't mean it doesn't make it fair. I mean, I remember playing Glee in Birmingham, right? The Glee club, and I think the Glee club in Birmingham is the flagship club, and I went there, and I was on like a professional bill. I'm on a professional bill, and I've been a comedian for like 32 years. I'm more professional than the people who are actually being booked as the headliners. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely. You know what I mean? I've been a comedian for 32 years. I know comedy inside and out.
Yeah.
So I goes to Glee, right, and they had me on a 10-minute spot. The guy who was. And I do these 10-minute spots, or I have done these. I've stopped doing them now, right? Because I think we're so hang on. I've been a comedian for 32 years. I know the game. I think well, not beneath me. Nobody's beneath me, but I know what I'm doing, and I'm every bit as good, if not better, much better than your headliners, right? Yeah. So the guy who was like the sound guy, he said, got like 10 minutes, 12 tops, right? I went on stage and I absolutely, right, annihilated a full room at Glee. Right, and I came off, and the other comedians were silent, and like when I came, I got my stuff, and I like floated out of the place, and the bloke who was the MC, he came out, and he straight away attacked me, right, for being so like out there, right, and then the first comedian who went on was an Irish guy playing a guitar, and for the first minute or so, because I just stood there watching, for the first minute or so, all he did was attack me and use me, right? And I thought to myself, well, that's way out of order. That's way out of order. It's unprofessional, if nothing else. Anyway, so the lad who was looking after me at the time, right, phoned Glee about it, and Glee, and because you got a phone for your feedback, right? And on one side they said I was too old school, and then on the other side they said I was too out there, right? And I said, well, how do the two go together? How can you be old school and out there at the same time, right? And I thought to myself, basically, what are these people looking for, right? I mean, they booked me back on I think on the Birmingham Comedy Festival, and I did a night at Glee again, and I got paid for that one. But I thought to myself, what? Because I think it all comes through off the curb. Yeah. And I thought to myself, what are these people? You've got a comedy club, right? What are you looking for? Right, first of all, you want your audience in there, don't you? Yeah. Right, and next thing, because a lot of them do food, you want them to eat, you want them to drink, right? But most important, so they're all spending money. But most important of all, what you want is you want them to have a good laugh. Yeah. Right. What they're trying to do, though, right, is they're trying to control how your audience laugh or what your audience laughs at.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether it's old school or it doesn't matter whether it's out there. The thing was that the audience will, and because I tape everything on C90 cassettes, I'm old school, right? Everything gets recorded on a C90 cassette. So like I know how well I did. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and I just absolutely annihilated them. But that wasn't good enough for them. They wanted me to annihilate them, right, by making the audience laugh in the way that the people who own Glee wanted me to make the audience laugh. Not how I wanted to make them laugh.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's what, and it's like a control, really. And they're all, and I think that's wrong, because you look at the comedy circuit, and you look, you know, for me, it's kind of like a lot of people saying the same kind of things.
Saccharized. It's really like sanitised now, isn't it? In that there's no edge to comedy anymore, is there? It's
but comedy's, but you see, comedy is all about edge, isn't it? On Thursday, I did this keynote speaking presentation.
Okay.
Right. I got the gig maybe, I don't know, a week and a half before I did it. Never done anything like that before in my life, right? And basically these 6 people, there was like 3 ex-footballers, a multi-millionaire, like he was worth £100 million, I think, and he's like a dragon without being in the dragon's den, if you know what I mean. And there was a sports presenter there, and they were on like a week-long course, right, being taught how to do a keynote speech, right? Okay. They were being taught how to do it, and what these 2 lads who were organising it thought was, well, comedy, quite rightly, is a massive part of keynote speaking, or it should be.
Yeah.
So I put this 2-hour presentation together, and I went and gave them the benefit of my experience of 32 years in comedy, and they all loved it. Do you know what I mean? They've all messaged me and said how fantastic it was. But like, even though that's the case, I'm still, and my knowledge of comedy, there was nothing you could tell me because I've been doing it for too many years.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But you're still not regarded as being anything. There's still, you know, I even though I've gone and done all these 5-minute and 10-minute spots around the country for no money, right? Because I just absolutely love it. Still don't take you seriously. But you see, like I said to these people on this keynote speaking presentation that I did, spontaneity and surprise and being edgy, right, is what comedy's all about.
It is true, isn't it? I mean, your crowd work is second to none. You'll go into a crowd and you can riff with that crowd. He looks like fucking Elton John. You know what I mean? And how long did it take you to develop that level of crowd work? You know, the improvised, quick-witted, bang.
It started, I can tell you exactly when it started. It started on a Sunday afternoon in 1998, right? I was on a rich vein of form with my gigs, right? And I'd done a gig, I can't remember his name. I think it's Noel Faulkner at the Comedy Caf.
Right? Oh, it was a lovely venue, that Shoreditch.
Yeah, right. And I always remember playing there in an open mic spot one time in the early to mid 90s, and I blew him away. And he said to me, he said, you can go on there and talk about your grandma with one leg. And I said, well, I haven't got a grandma with one leg. And he said, no, I don't think you have. But he said, at the end of the day, you have enough presence on stage to go out there and just riff, just wing it. Okay then. So, you know, I'd only been doing comedy for like 4 or 5 years. This is what I can't understand. You see, comedy, right, is at least a 10-year apprenticip. Do you know what I mean? To be able to
that only 10 years.
Do you know what I mean? Right? Yeah. But you've got comedians now, they've been going 3 or 4 years and they're on Mock the Week or they're live at the Apollo. They haven't got a clue what they're doing.
Yeah, but like I was saying previously, if you took them up to the North East into a social club and they'd be fucking dragged off.
Dying their ass.
They would be dragged off stage, wouldn't they?
You know, it's a long apprenticeship to be a comedian. Anyway, so I was like, I usually be like stood there with a microphone, like, you know what I mean, rigid and everything. But I was getting like more loose, more fluid. I was bearing in mind what Noel had said. Then this one time in 1998, I got this gig on a Sunday afternoon with 2 strippers, right, in this place called the Old Star, just off the A1, at the start of the A58, right? And it was for 50 Sunderland supporters who'd been down to Tottenham Sunderland football fixture, right, at White Hart Lane on the Saturday, and then we're all coming up, right, and they'd booked in to this pub called the Old Star, right, for food, a piss up, 2 strippers and a comedian, right, and I knew the guy who was organising, so I went in there, right, and like I say, my confidence was high because I had a good run of shows, and I had that spine. It's important to have your spine of your act, right, and I knew it inside out, and I was getting bored with it, you see, and that's another thing. It's essential, right, to not get bored with that, because if you start getting bored with it, the audience are going to get bored with it. So anyway, they had this bloke there, right, and they called him Tiny. And he was the biggest bloke I'd ever seen in my life. He was about 6'6", 6'7", right, and he had a great big ginger beard, right. And I just remember going up to him, I thought, well, I'm bored with this, right. So I just went up to him and grabbed him by the beard and I said, "You big fat mackem bastard," right. And I stuck the lips on him. I grabbed hold of his beard and I stuck the lips on him and I shoved him back like this and I still had hold of his beard. And it was like, I suppose like a court jester waiting for the king's approval. Do you know what I mean? And so he started to laugh, fortunately, and all the lads started laughing because it was just like unexpected, and I just started to riff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just wing it, and I was on stage for about an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I knew, and I didn't want to stop because once you started, right, and I was just like off on a tangent, but I always knew I had the spine there.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always tried to do ever since. And it's just like growing and growing and growing. I know that spine inside out and backside first and upside down. But because I'm confident with that and I know that spine, right? And go on the ribs, I can put the ribs on. The ribs are me like going off on flights of fancy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you always know if you go down a blind alley that you can come back to your spine.
Yeah, you can find a reference point.
So yeah, and that's exactly how I've been working since 1998. I love it. I feel restricted if I'm just stood there with the microphone.
There's a lot of comedians can't do that though. They have to do their act, don't they? And so they can't deviate from their act. And so because sometimes you have to go off road. Say you've got, like that you just said, you've got your act there, which is black. You've got this spine. Some comedians can only do that. They can't improvise a riff, can they? It's a gift to be able to go off road. I
don't know. It's like nothing in life is scripted, is it?
No.
Nothing in your life is scripted. And you think about the best times you've ever had the crack, right? You've been in the bowls with all your mates, right? Somebody says something funny, right? Not scripted. Everybody starts laughing. Somebody else comes back, right? It's not scripted.
No.
And that's what I try and do when I go in. You can't do it in that comedy club situation, really, because you're not afforded the luxury of leaving the stage. They won't let you leave the stage. But when I go into like a working men's club situation, or when I go into after doing a speaking situation, you are afforded that. I run on the room like a lunatic, right? And it's kind of like, you know, I try and make it where it's all like I'm with mates in a boozer and you're saying something and you're taking the piss out and you listen. I set myself up for the fall and I let them come back. I'm inviting them to have a go at me, because ultimately, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to break down or bring down these barriers and divides that have been built up between us through political correctness. So I attack and I invite other people to attack me and laugh. We're laughing at each other, but we're laughing with each other, if you know what I mean. And at the end of the act, I always drop my pebble into the water, and I create the ripples, and I use the analogy of, well, I'm that pebble. I create ripples of laughter, you know. And I want anything I've said funny, go out and let those ripples spread out. You know, let that laughter spread out. You know. Let's all start laughing at each other. Let's start laughing with each other. You know, and there's on that comedy circuit, they don't like it really when you because I mean I get into people's faces this close. And they don't like that. You know, I feel as though in those like that middle class progressive comedy club situation, they don't like it when you attack. You know.
Do you think they're scared? Do you know your style is very kind of aggressive in a way? You know what I mean? It's confrontational when you are. Do you find that a lot of them audiences down south kind of like are a bit taken aback by it, kind of thing, or not?
I think they are. They're not used to it, are they? Because they've got this thing of you know, somebody stood there with a microphone. And, and I find that really restrictive. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't attack any comedian for doing it like that. Do you know what I mean? But that's not my way. It's not for me. It's not what comedy is all about.
A lot of time you don't use a microphone.
I never use a microphone.
Yeah.
I always, once again, it's something that I feel.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you think that nowadays, well, certainly on the comedy circuit, they look down on jokes, traditional jokes,
yeah, of course,
as like
it's
a low form of comedy kind of thing? And you've done Edinburgh, but I read an article, I can't remember who it's by, and he said that most of these Edinburgh shows now are basically spoken word, and if you were to cut the fat off all these shows to get it down to the comedy, you'd probably get about 10 minutes of comedy in a fucking hour show, because it's all fucking talking about shit, you know what I mean, kind of thing. Do you think a lot of these shows are spoken words and comedy has lost its way in that sense?
I mean, I've done Edinburgh, the last 3 years, 17, 18 and 19, and with it all, well, since I finished the campaign in 2010, what I've tried to do with my comedy, I've tried to mix that working men's club style of comedy with that like more thought provoking, comedy club style of comedy, and I just think that's the way. Whenever you see me, it's like the spoken word, like you said, but there's any amount of gags there all the time. Yeah. Because I think I say what I want to politically in the spoken word, and try and make jokes along that line, following that spoken word kind of path. But it's the quick one-liners and the working men's club kind of comedy, right? Yeah. That like they're the little like bursts of colour. Do you know what I mean? And humour all the way through, and it just keeps that pot boiling. But it also puts me back in touch completely with my roots. I never want to lose my roots. No, I'm a working men's club comedian. I'm a stag comedian. That's where I began. That's like I said, there was no comedy clubs when I first started, and it's like, and I don't ever want to lose that. I never really want to get myself in a position where I get offered a gig in a working men's club and I don't want to do it because I've gone up my own arse. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. I want to still be able to perform in every situation that I can. And like I say, earlier this year, I did like 4 nights at the Soho Theatre with my show Forgiveness about my dad's murder, and I got like 4 standing ovations. Eddie Izzard took me for supper in his club. I went to see his, because we got.
Look at him now name dropping.
Yeah, well, no, he did. He came. He invited me to see his show at the Leicester Square Theatre after my last show, and I went there, and we have the same promoter. And he said, "I'll come and see your show when you're back in because I've heard great things about it." And his road manager said nobody gets like 4 standing ovations in London, and I did it, like, and there was a guy called Bill Fellows who was an actor from Downton Abbey. Right. He's from Teesside, and he said I'd never seen it before where like a crowd stood up and applauded a performer and then queued up to give him a hug or shake his hand, which they did, and that's what it was in Edinburgh too, So like I can go to these, and the thing was, that the Soho Theatre loved it because they're all about diversity of the Soho Theatre, like a very cutting edge theatre. It might be only a small theatre, but it's like the very cutting edge.
We went watching a comedian called Neil Lmbrger one.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's like a very cutting edge theatre. And they're all about diversity, and they loved the fact that they had like a working men's club, working class proper working class, working in that working class style. That's a difference, right? Comedian in their place, and they had working class people in for the first time.
Novelty value kind of.
Well, no, not novelty value. Just for the first time, this working class comedian, this working man, had attracted working class people to the theatre, and that really caught their imagination. You know what I mean? And I really like thrived on that, and it's great to do that, right? It's great to do that, and they're talking about tours with Forgiveness and all of this, But I still want to be able to be in that mindset where I can always play a working men's club, even though I might be doing this at this end of the scale, right? I still want to be doing that at that end of the scale as well.
You can cover it from all bases.
Yeah, of course you can, because it's what you call right. So like last year I tried to do myself in, right? Through personal circumstances in my life, our last left me and everything, and I was devastated at the start of 2019. I couldn't like get many gigs. I felt unfulfilled. Always wanted to be an actor, right? And I felt this frustration and everything else. So I tried to take my own life. God was good. Touch wood. My friend found me. Anyway, but I decided when I pulled out of it, right? Maybe it was 2 days later, I did this comedy spot in a pub in Middlesbrough called the Twisted Lip, and I absolutely paralysed the audience. There were only 12 people there, but I annihilated the audience, right? Completely annihilated them. And I came away from there, right? 2 days after I'd been found trying to take my own life, and I thought to myself, that feels fucking brilliant, that, like, you know what I mean? Absolutely. I felt empowered. I felt invincible, right? That just 2 days after I'd tried to do this, I'd done a fantastic spot. And I decided at that moment, right, that for me, it was going to be total comedy.
Yeah.
That I wasn't going to turn down any opportunities to gig, no matter on what level, whether it was in a working men's club, whether it was on a sportsman's dinner, whether it was on a stag do, whether it was in a comedy club, whether it was in a theatre, whatever, right? I was going to do as many of those venues, health permitting, that I could possibly do. Total comedy. And that's what it is. For me, it's total comedy. It's going into every situation that you can and just being a pro. And not put myself in just one. I don't think you can learn as a comedian, right? And this is only, by the way, right? These are all my thoughts. I'm not saying this is right for everybody, right? These are my thoughts based on my experiences over 32 years, and I don't think you can be a full-rounded comedian, right, if you're only going to play to one kind of audience and in one kind of situation.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I feel.
Like I said, a lot of the comedy club comedians, the top ones would struggle in a lot of social clubs, sportsmen's dinners, that kind of thing. But you wrote a play, it's a show, isn't it, about your dad being murdered, Forgiveness, and it's doing very well all over the show. But in the actual essence of it, how hard was it to forgive your dad's killer?
Do you know what it was? On that day, when we found out on the Saturday that my father had died. Me and our lass were in bed and there was a thump at the door, something like 7 o'clock in the morning. I went down the stairs with 2 bobbies on the doorstep and I thought, what's all this about? Do you know what I mean? You shit yourself, don't you? Anyway, I brought the bobbies in and the bobbies just said, look, your dad's being killed in a fire. And I mean, and our lass came downstairs and that was difficult enough, you know, to accept that your dad had been killed in a fire. And my head was all over the place, and I got changed, went through to his house in Redcar, and they had like it was like that scene from ET where they had the big plastic tent over the front of the house and people in white suits walking in and out, you know.
Forensics.
So it was like I looked at the situation and thought, you know. And I wanted to go in the house, but I couldn't because you would have been like contaminating the murder scene and all. But we didn't know, and it just looked a bit weird. And it wasn't until the following day on the Sunday that we got a phone call at 7 in the morning from the murder detectives, and the murder detectives said, "Well, you know, this is about your dad's murder." And up to that point, we hadn't been told. You know what I mean? So like, I just flung the phone across the room because I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because we were under the impression it was just like died in. I say just, but it was just died in a house fire, like, you know. So the Bobbies came out on this Sunday afternoon, and they'd actually caught the bloke who'd done it through a weird set of circumstances. Too long to go into, but they caught him, and so they'd questioned him for like 4 hours it was. And we were sat in our conservatory, like, and before the biggest policeman came in, they told me that Dad had been murdered. You see, and this bloke had strangled him for 5 minutes and then set him on fire to cover his tracks up. You see, and it was a weird thing because my dad was like a very forgiving bloke. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Never harboured any grudges. Yeah. He'd always forgive, but you know, he'd always remember. But he would always forgive people and give them a second chance. And I don't know. I just felt him really strong. I cracked a joke like a really bad taste joke about the situation, and I laughed, and our lass said to the policeman couldn't believe it. I mean, what I said was I was like they told me, and I broke down. And my mate Andy Aiden, he was there, and our lass was there. 4 detectives were there, and I broke down obviously. And then when I came straight, I was looking out the window, and I said, "Well, I don't know what to do now." And the detective said, "What do you mean you don't know what to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know whether to get him cremated or buried." And then Bobby said, "We've just told you he's being murdered, Mr. Mcglade." I said, "I know, yeah, but you've got to prepare, haven't you?" And they always say if you get like a loved one cremated, you have to scatter their ashes where they used to like go in. I don't think they'd be too happy at the cheap meat counter at Aldi's, right? And I started to laugh, right? And the look on these Bobby's faces was like, fucking hell. And I was laughing, right? Because the looks on their faces. Because that would have been my father's. My dad was very irreverent. He didn't stand in ceremony for anybody. He was the most un-PC, irreverent man that there was, right? But he used that humour as a way of including people. He never used it as a way of attacking and excluding them. He always used it. He used to take the piss to draw them into the fold, to put his arms around them and say, "Come on, you're one of us. You're one of the lads. You know, let's have a crack, right?" And I felt him, you know, like in that moment, and I was laughing, and I knew he realised it. And then our lass said to the Bobbies, because I was like laughing, and our lass said to the Bobbies, "Oh, it's just his way, right? It's just Chris's way," and. It was weird because it was my way, but it was our old fella's way as well. And in that moment, right, when our lass said that, I just felt him, like, all down my right-hand side. And it was like, I could see him in my mind's eye, and he was saying, "Go on, that's what you do." I did it all my life, you know what I mean? Just laugh, just overcome, just laugh. And it was in that moment that I actually forgave my dad's killer. Because I mean, we've all seen the film The Exorcist, and I believe that there's a power of good and a power of evil, right? And there's one of the final scenes in The Exorcist is where the young priest, goes into the bedroom, and the girl who was possessed with the devil has killed the old priest, and she sat there like this, cackling, you know. And the young priest gets angry, doesn't he? And he starts pummeling, they start fighting, and they end up on the floor, and he's pummeling her and everything, and he's saying, "Come into me, you bastard," kind of thing. And the devil goes into the priest, and like he's like this, and he's going to strangle the girl, because he's got the devil inside of him, and he just like, and the anger, and he like throws himself out the window, and he goes on the stairs, breaks his neck, and he's like laid at the bottom of the stairs, and I think the policeman comes over and says, "Do you want a priest to the last rites?" And he says, "No, I want to take this to the great, I want to take it, I want it to end here, I want it to die with me," right? And for me, like in that moment, all that went on in my head, right? And it was like I wanted that force of darkness that took hold of my father's killer, right? That was really trying to provoke me to become dark as well and to hate and everything. I wanted that darkness to die with my father. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want to become full of vengeance and anger and hate and spite and all these kind of things, right? So it just seemed natural for me to kill that darkness. I know it was, and I knew it was what our dad would have wanted me to do. I knew he would have done it the same. So I forgave, and ever since that moment, it's like I've been like, you know, I don't hate anybody. You know, this is what makes me laugh, because you know, you tell jokes about race, colour, creed, or whatever. You know, you go down this, like I say, I've been on this political journey for the last 14 years or whatever it is, and you're looking at things about Zionism, and you get accused of all this and that and the other. I don't have any hate in me for anybody. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't even hate the man who strangled my dad. So why would I hate somebody who was black just because they're black? Or why would I hate somebody who's transgender just because they're transgender? Do you see what I'm saying? I don't hate anybody. There are people that I love more than others, but I don't actually hate anybody, you know.
So your forgiveness for your father's killer was almost instantaneous.
It was.
It wasn't like over time you came to.
I just, do you know what? I felt it, right, and I kind of like don't think I did it like glibly. Do you know what I mean? Because I've questioned it and stuff, and like earlier this year, at the start of this year, what are the chances of this? My youngest stepson, Max, he moved into this rental property in Redcar with his girlfriend because she was having a baby. And who do you think lived in the house, right? Who was the previous tenant in this house before before me youngest stepson, and it was the son of the bloke who murdered me dad.
All right.
Right, and they found letters, you see, from the bloke who murdered me dad to his son at this house, and my wife sent, or my ex-wife now, she sent one of them over, like, and it was saying how well he was doing in prison, and you know he was working in the cycle shop, and he was they were hoping to get phones in the cells, and so he'd be able to phone him more often, you know, and he'd sat a couple of diplomas and all this and that and the other, you know. And I looked at the situation and I thought, and I felt the forgiveness there still, do you know what I mean? But I had this like doubt in my mind, right? Did I actually forgive? Right? So I applied through the restorative justice program to go and meet him in prison, because up until that point I'd never known which prison he was in. I'd never gone looking for him. I'd never, you know, wanted to find out where he was. Do you know what I mean? I'd had no interest really. Yeah. But I got the details of the prison that he was in, and I just thought to myself, no, go and meet him, and so I applied to meet him, and he agreed, right, through the restorative justice program. And then of course, it was funny because I got the letter on Christmas Eve, and then of course you had Christmas, and then I was preparing for the Soho theatre shows, and then of course lockdown happened, and then everything's fell apart after that. But I realised, see, I'm always thinking, I'm always soul searching, I'm always trying to grow and develop as a bloke. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. People say, oh well, you know, when I get to this point, that's when I know I'll have arrived. Well, I don't think that's right. I don't think you ever stop learning. I don't think you ever stop growing. And if you do stop learning and growing, you know, before you die, then there's something the matter. I think you still learn and grow. You can learn, and you can still be learning on the day that you die. Do you know what I mean? You can still be growing as a human being. So I look at things all the time, and in the months since I applied under that restorative justice program, and now, like, I've almost seen it. I've almost feel as though when that letter came into my possession, that it was a bit of a test. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. To see if I actually did forget, and I realised that I have. Because I don't have any feelings of hate for him. Yeah. I don't have any feelings of anger for him. Do you know what I mean? It's like I don't love him, but most important of all, I don't hate him. And I think that's the most important thing of all. You know, that I don't hate him.
So through COVID, you didn't get to meet him?
No, because COVID stopped everything, and I just thought to myself, I felt as though this letter coming into my path, because I'm a spiritual fella, right? And I wouldn't have said religious, because I think religion's a man-made construct, but I'm a spiritual man, and I think, you know, there are signs and everything all round if you only open your eyes and keep your ears open to see them and hear them, if you know what I mean. You know, people think they're coincidences, but I don't know. I don't think they are. I think it's sort of just like life's, your universe's way of like giving you a kick up the arse or point you down a certain road, a direction. Do you know what I mean? You just got to have the savvy about you to realise that you are being pointed down this road, and go for it, and have the courage to go for it. And I just thought to myself, when lockdown started, I thought to myself, hang on, that letter came into my possession, right, from absolutely nowhere. Through what are the chances of my stepson, right, moving into a house that was occupied, previous tenant, by this bloke who murdered my dad's son? The chances of that are millions to one, right? And I just felt as though this meant something, right? And so I got the letter, and I thought that letter was like the universe testing you. Yeah. Do you actually forgive him, right? And I thought, by virtue of the fact that I thought, right, I'm going to go and see him, I felt as though I passed the universe's test, if you know what I mean. Yeah, yeah. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because I was prepared, and I still probably would be prepared to go there and shake his hand. I don't know what I would say to him. I don't know if I would say, like, you know, why did you do it? I don't think I would be as fucking ignorant to say that kind of thing. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I would just want to see if he actually forgave himself, because I think that's important. I mean, there's no forgiveness in the world, is there? And the press are always like, you know, building people up against each other. And I don't think the media kind of like, you know, I don't think they ever promote those thoughts or feelings or emotions of forgiveness. It's always hate all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just think to myself, like, yes, it's important forgiving people who do you wrong, but it's also important to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all done bad stuff, haven't I? I've done bad stuff, you've done bad stuff, he's probably done bad stuff, do you know what I mean?
He's doing a lot of him.
Right, I can see, exactly. He's all this coffee shop thing is just a front for him fucking dealing drugs and shit.
Yeah, he's washing money.
Yeah, exactly, of course he is, right? But we've all done stuff that we regret or are wrong, and I think you've got to forgive yourself, you know? And I wanted to go there and say to him, have you forgiven yourself, kind of thing. I wanted to see if he had any, no, not remorse. I don't want anybody to be like capping under out, you know what I mean? I'm one of the lads. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to see if he just had forgiven himself, if he could see that he'd done wrong and he'd forgiven himself. And if he'd forgiven himself, then for me, that's job done. I'm not saying let him out of prison early or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, when it was the court thing and it was the trial and stuff. He in the first instance he'd admitted on video that he'd done it, right? Then of course the legal system got the clause into him and they convinced him that he could get away with manslaughter, which is like a reduced sentence. Yeah. And that made me angry. Right, because and there's a difference between anger and hate, right? Hate's what comes if you don't overcome the anger, right? So I looked at the situation and that made me angry. The fact that he tried to retract his original thing of murder to manslaughter, because he didn't manslaughter me, Dad. He murdered him, right? And then he tried to cover his tracks. He showed no remorse. And then and so I don't know. I looked at it. And I got angry with it, and I just thought to myself, right, okay, how do I feel about that? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I realised that the only way I was going to do it was to overcome that anger, and that's what I've continued to do ever since. Really, you know what I mean? It's so important. I realised that he was in a bad position himself. He was homeless. He was alcoholic. He was sleeping rough in the car. He'd lost his job delivering pizzas. You know, he wasn't in a good position himself. No. You know. And
so what was it like? He tried to rob your dad of money and then it went wrong?
He was my dad's friend. Okay. He was my dad's friend and he was homeless and he went around my dad's house wanting somewhere to stay. My dad said yes, and then my dad always had I don't know, a bottle of brandy or a bottle of spirits, whiskey or something like that. You know, he wanted another drink. He was always already drunk apparently, and he said, he wanted a drink, and our dad wouldn't give him one, said he had enough. So he wanted his car keys to go to Tesco 24 and get some more cans, and our dad said no, he wouldn't. Our dad had his car keys, and then he said a fight broke out, and this is all what came out in court. We'll never know for certain. Do you know what I mean? But he said a fight broke out between him and my dad, which is impossible because Dad was 77 at the time, and unsteady on his legs and stuff. So anyway, they ended up having a fight, and he strangled me dad. Yeah. He strangled me dad for 5 minutes and then doused his body with brandy, set him on fire to cover his tracks, robbed him, went off to Tesco 24 to get cans, came back, made sure the house was burning, and then off he went. You know? But you see, he was caught because once again, through coincidence, if you want to call it coincidence, there was a lad at 3 o'clock in the morning whizzing off his tits on amphetamines about a mile away, right? Okay. A mile away, and he'd had a fallout with his girlfriend, so he's riding around on his bicycle. Yeah. And he smelt the smoke from a mile away. Okay, maybe it's because his senses were right with the amount of amphetamines he'd been on. Yeah. And he just went down Mersey Road, it was Mersey Road in Redcar from near Lock Park, and just followed the smell of the smoke. And then he saw smoke drifting across his school field that my dad's house backed onto. And he went round the road and he saw this like smoke coming out the back of the house. So he went round the front, kicked the back gate in, saw my dad's body on the floor, called the obviously the fire brigade and the police came out, and they put the fire and got my dad's body out. Now the really strange thing is that the police had said if dad's body had been in that fire another 2 possibly 3 minutes, then his body would have been burnt past the point of being able to do a special post-mortem on him.
Yeah.
You know. So they caught him just in time, really. If it had been like another 2 minutes, probably he's had a cigarette in bed, a fag in bed, and set himself on fire.
And he'd have got away with it, that fella.
And that was and he'd have got away with it. But do you see what I'm saying about the serendipity, the coincidence of it all? You know what I mean? It kind of it all, you know. And from that now, you see, you know, I've written a show about it, and the show is kind of like touching people's lives. You know, I've had people when I took it to Edinburgh. I'd had people who'd suffered murder themselves come to the show. There was one woman from Bedfordshire.
Okay.
Right. She travelled 200 miles to see the preview in Middlesbrough, in the Westgarth Club in Borough, and her cousin had been stabbed repeatedly by this, I think, a boyfriend or whatever, like about 70 times. And it set her on the path to forgiveness. I've had people who's had family members, and they have had these family members commit suicide, and people have been struggling to forgive, like the brothers or the sisters who've committed suicide. But it set them on the path to forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I mean, even recently, when I did this keynote speech presentation on Thursday. There was a guy there. He was like an RAF fighter, jet fighter pilot, right? And of course, I talked because I was talking about the importance of having serious and comedy together, because I think it's the two faces, isn't it? The two masks. One with the smiley face, one with the happy face. And that's always a thing on the theatres, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like pathos and humour. And I was explaining to them the importance of, you know, when they're giving their keynote speeches, if it's all facts, people will shut off. You've got to like put a little bit of humour in there to keep people's attention. And so I used the example of my dad's show, Forgiveness. That's how I've done it. You know, how can you make a show about your dad's murder funny? But I did it, you see. And he sent me some messages yesterday. And he said, like, you really touched me. And he said, he didn't say why. But he just said that at the start of the year, he parted company with his now ex-fiancée, and he said he woke up this morning, and he sent her an email forgiving her for what she'd done. I never said what she'd done, but he sent her an email forgiving her, and he said he felt absolutely wonderful, right? Yeah. And he put underneath it, and this is like a jet fighter pilot, right? From like a military, upper middle class military bracket. I've never met me before in his life. And he put the power of forgiveness. That's what he put at the bottom of the message, the power of forgiveness. And then lo and behold, right, later on, he screenshot this email that his ex had sent back to him, right? And she'd said, "Oh, well, let's meet up and have a cup of coffee." And I thought, the whole thing blew me away, right? Because I realised that, like, you know, once again, that thing of forgiveness, it's not pushed or promoted in the press, is it? Right?
Divide, conquer, hate, and all.
Yeah, of course, it's divide, conquer, hate, you know, whatever, right? And I realised the power of it, and I thought to myself, that's my dad's legacy. That it was almost like he had to die in that way, right? So that I could pick up his gauntlet and say, right, Dad. Yeah. Let's go and bring a little bit more love and light into the world, shall we? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like fingers, it's like tentacles spreading out now. You know, when I was at Edinburgh, I always remember there was one girl, and you're giving out your fucking leaflet signing outside of I didn't have to, because the jungle tom-toms, and I was packed out every night. But there was one girl, and she's pacing up and down. And I said, "Are you coming in?" And she said, "Oh, I might do, like." I said, "Well, what's the crack like?" And she said, "Oh, well, my brother committed suicide, like, you know, and I'm not too sure if it'd be for me." And I said, "Hey, that's fine, you know, if you don't feel that thing, if you don't feel comfy, don't come in, right? So whatever you want, you can have a laugh, you can have a cry, whatever you want." Anyway, room was packed out. She went in, just about to start. Because I was in the City Cafe, and it's like a karaoke booth, not much bigger than this room. About 40 odd people in there, and this girl came in. She was the last one through the door. And I said to this bloke, move up, let her sit down. So she sat down and she loved it, right? And she laughed, and she cried. And that was the thing, you see. People come out the show in Edinburgh and they were laughing and crying. It was happy crying, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's the effect it's had on people. And I just think to myself, really, let's try and push that a bit further. You know, I mean, there was a lot of opportunities came after the Soho Theatre, and I know, because the Soho Theatre have been in touch with me, that the opportunities are still there. You know what I mean? And I, you know, people are talking now in terms of like Netflix and, you know, tours, UK tours, and touring the show in America and all this. You know, I think, and especially with the way that America's going at this moment in time, I think, you know, that message of forgiveness is massively needed. You know,
yeah, definitely,
absolutely.
Was it hard to write the show, and did it bring a lot of memories up?
I had to troll it, yeah, of course. You know, I went. My father, like I say, was the most irreverent, un-PC man that there was. Right. Yeah. He was like a pig. He lived like Stig of the Dump. You know what I mean? But he was funny. Yeah. You know what I mean? He was a working class funny man. Yeah. And so like I sat down and I thought, well, how am I going to approach it? And I just sat down with my pen, sat in the library, tried to like work every day. Got up at 8:30, got a shower, got my bags, got my books, went into the library and just sat writing all for maybe 3 weeks. Just sat writing all the memories that I could think of. You know, the funny things he did, and then I saw like on other pages that I put like all like what I would say were like one-liner working men's club kind of thing, you know, and then I'd write other things that were serious, and I just kind of like slotted it all together, you know, and then I worked at it. By April time, I was rehearsing it, so that when I did the first preview, I knew it off by heart. Nobody could believe it, because like a preview is supposed to be like a work in progress, isn't it? But
I smashed it. Yeah.
I absolutely smashed it.
So it took 3 weeks of like in the library, did you say?
Well, it was months. It was like I was doing it from January right the way through to July, which is like 7 months. But for the first 3 weeks of writing it, all I did was write down, and this is what I said to you, because he's got a great show in him, right? With his experiences, and he's always saying, "How do you do it? How do you do it?"
I've not a fucking clue how you do it.
No, but like you say, for the first 3 weeks, all I did was just like write down the memories of my father and growing up with him, and the things that we did through our lives. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when I got that kind of like blocked off and not already, then I started to write like, you know, about the day we found out we'd murdered and the fallout from him being murdered, if you know what I mean. And then just like, it all just like came together, and well, the rest is history now, you know.
It's really I really need to see this show if they ever open theatres again with more than 2 fucking people in it.
Well, like you say, they're on about it going back into the Soho Theatre, and you know, by all means, come down, like you know, as my guest.
Thank you very much. I'd like to see that kind of thing. Did you, when you wrote The Right to Hate, did you have any idea it was going to go as fucking mad as it did?
How could I? I had no. I've said this before, you know, and I want to clarify one thing before we start. That basically, like, it's not about wanting to hate.
No.
I feel as though political correctness, right, and this progressive liberal left mindset, right, has taken away like our freedoms to express ourselves properly, right? And I want that freedom to express myself in whichever way I want to, right? To be given back. Straight away, and I've had this with people who've challenged me online about, you know, oh well, you're opening the doors for people who want to say the N word or the P word or whatever, and so on and so forth, right? Well, I'm not at all, right? Because I never called anybody those things in anger in my life. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Right? It's all about self-responsibility and taking responsibility for yourself and what you say and what you do, isn't it? Right? Being responsible. But when I wrote the poem, what I was trying to say is, I just you know, we're allowed to like the things that you like. Well, I want to like. What if I don't want to like the things you like? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I want to be given that right back. I want the right to like what I like, what I want to like or dislike, given back to me. And I feel as though that right's being taken away. So, I mean, and I didn't set out to write it. When I wrote The Right to Hate, I was laid in bed one morning. I got up for a cup of tea, went back into bed, And I always have a pad and a pen next to me bed, and I just got the first. Because I'm thinking all the time, and I got the first line in my head. You tell me what I can't say.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not lying to you. I got my pen, put the pen. You tell me what I can't say, and then within 4 minutes, I'd written a lot.
Yeah.
Right. It just like flowed. I was like, ah. It takes me longer to say it than it did to write the fucking thing.
It's like when some of the best songs are written in 2 minutes. You
Well,
know what I mean? Without it just flows through you.
It just came out, and then I looked at it, and I just finished. It was in September 2017, and I just finished Edinburgh, right? And I was in contact with my PR woman, Sarah, and I read it to her. She said, "That's fantastic." And I said, "I know, yeah." I said, "It's just come out." I said, "I can't believe it." Anyway, I didn't do anything with it. And then I just felt as though when I was doing the show Northern Monkey in 2018 about the discrimination I feel as though working class, especially northern working class people, have to go through, it just felt right that the poem sat right at the end of the show. Do you know what I mean? And so I included it, and people thought it was great. We got these standing ovations with it. But when I came back from Edinburgh in 2018, I put it online in October 2018 because I started this YouTube channel called Northern Monkey, and that was like what I think was my first video. So we went to the blast furnace, right, in Redcar, which is the old blast furnace. Now they've closed it all down, and just recorded it in one, and I put it on my YouTube channel. And I just left it there. Yeah. It didn't do anything. It had about maybe just a few hundred hits, and then in 2019, July last year, what did I do? I wasn't gigging, and somebody had asked me to go down to, I think it was Chelmsford or Colchester in Essex, to do this comedy competition, right? Out in this like really bottom end music festival, right? Yeah. And I went, and I had no money on it, right? And I went all the way from our house in Redcar in the northeast down to this thing, and I did it, right? I didn't even win. I didn't even win it, but I wasn't bothered. And then the following day, I came home. I was on the train, and my mate messaged me. He said, "Have you seen this?" And this Geordie fella called Brian Tuff, ex-Special Forces he is. Right. I met him. A lovely fella. He follows me on Facebook. He'd seen the poem on my YouTube channel, and he had uploaded it to his Facebook, right? And it had something like 9,000 views, right? By the time I got home to Redcar or to Darlington to catch a connecting train, it had gone up to about 25,000 views, right? Yeah. Within like 2 weeks, it had something like, and this is just going into Edinburgh, it had about 850,000 views. And I was over the moon with that. I couldn't believe it. I was a bit like, when these things happen to you, you kind of like, you're in a fishbowl and you feel everybody's like looking at you. You know what I mean? Everybody's scrutinising every facet of what you do. And then of course I went up to Edinburgh and just forgot all about it really, you know. And then it got to sort of like early part of June, and I was really down with myself. Lockdown this year, really felt really down with myself. Didn't know where's all this opportunity gone that was there. Blah blah blah, right? And this one night, it was about the 12th or 13th of June. I think it was a Thursday. I just don't know why. I was getting like notifications on Facebook, right, from the Right to Hate, and I'm like looking. And it was like I was getting more and more of them. I thought, this is starting to move. I looked on this one Thursday night. I looked before I went to bed about midnight, and it was like at 1.1 million views. Right. Okay. So obviously, since August 2019 to like June, it'd gone up another couple of 100,000 or so. And I went to bed, and when I woke up the following morning, I put the thing on. I looked at it again, and overnight, it had like. I think it had gone up from 1.1 million to 1.4 million overnight, right? So I thought, wow, right? By the end of the day, 650,000 people had seen an extra 650,000 people. It was like 1.6 million, right? Anyway, the following day I was getting like messages on this. That was on the Friday. On the Saturday, the following day, I was getting messages from people saying, "Hey, we can't share the poem. We can't share it anymore, right?" Facebook's not letting us share it, and I thought we just restricted it. You see.
Okay.
So I got in touch with Brian, the bloke who uploaded it in the first instance in 2019. I said, "Have you all changed your settings?" And he said, "No, I haven't changed them." I said, "Well, Facebook, because he said obviously he's getting all the notifications. So he said, I haven't changed the settings at all, because I went up to he lives in a caravan park in County Durham, right? And he showed me. He said, look at my settings, and they were all still public. So Facebook had tried to restrict it. So I went back over to the blast furnace, right? And I said, right, this is what Facebook have done. So I'm going to do an impromptu thing now of the right to hate, right?"
Okay.
So I did another one, right? And I recorded it, and I said, right, let's see if we can get this going to 1 million by Wednesday. Well, by the end of the week, it had 2.2 million people seeing it, right? And I was absolutely inundated with messages, friend requests, and it went. So, in about the space of 2 weeks, about 5 million people that I know of, because it was going all over the place, That Lawrence Fox, the actor. He'd seen it, and he put on his. I don't know how many millions of people saw it on Twitter. There was is it Isaiah Washington or Isaiah Jackson, a black actor from America.
Okay.
He'd seen it. He'd put it on his Instagram, and he's got like hundreds of thousands of people following him. Do you know what I mean? So I reckon in all the forms, and then it was on my YouTube channel going through the roof. Easy 10 million people. Between 7 and 10 million people have seen it, and like the people from all over the world had seen it. I know people saying, "Well, you're right wing." Well, I'm not right wing. I've been a working class socialist and a trade unionist all my life. I joined the Labour Party when I was 18 years old. I was about £10.60 a year card carrying member of the Labour Party. You know what I mean? All my family was socialists. Yeah. I voted Conservative for the first time last year, right? Because the Labour Party turned their backs on their own constituents by calling for a second referendum over Brexit. You know what I mean? And you can't do that, know. And I wanted, and I couldn't vote for like an MP that was ignoring my vote. So I voted Conservative for the very first time in my life. Do you know what I mean? But having said that, you see, these people, they say, "Nah, yeah, Tory scum, you're a Tory," and I said, "Well, listen, I've voted Labour all my life. Only one time I voted Tory, right? It's like saying I've had sex with women all my life, but I have one wank and I'm a wanker." Yeah. You know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like there's no kind of like these people that call you Tory scum because you voted Tory once in your life, right? To try and uphold a democratic referendum in this country, the biggest vote in, they call you that, but they can't see that the Labour Party, right, who basically deliberately threw a general election, right, in order to oust their leader, they can't see that is actually even worse, because they had a chance to stop the Tories and they allowed the Tories to get back in. Yeah. That the Labour Party are just as bad as the Tories as far as I'm concerned, because they're even worse, because they had a chance. They had the opportunity to stop the Tories in 2017 and they didn't take it. They threw the general election on purpose, right? They threw the general election on purpose and they turned their backs, and all the millions of people at the bottom end of the scale would have benefited from that socialist manifesto that Corbyn was putting forward. But they let Corbyn put that manifesto forward because they always knew it was never going to get implemented. Do you know what I mean?
One of the questions I was asked, I think a bloke called Squire 7, he said, do you think there's any point in voting when the system's kind of fixed? Well, what do you think needs to change?
Right, so like I say, what I think needs to change is, I think globalism rules okay, doesn't it? Yeah. People say, well, what do you mean by globalism? What do you mean by globalism, right? Well, what I mean by globalism is like these global corporations, right? Who, I mean, in terms of the EU, these massive corporations have something like 33,000 lobbyists, right? We're lobbying the EU commissioners all the time, right? In order to get the best deal for them. They had the EU in the pockets, right? They have our politicians in the pockets. And for me, what has to happen is that globalism, right? We have to break that grip that globalism has on our politicians.
Yeah.
Our politicians have to represent us and not these global corporations.
Yeah.
You know. Now, I hear what the bloke's saying about you know, is there any point in voting? I would still say yes.
Yeah.
Because you see, your vote is the most important thing of all. It's the last line of defence you have against the man.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And if you stop using it, the man's going to walk all over you. Do you know what I mean? It's the only thing we have.
Yeah.
Our vote. But it's what we have to do is, and that's all we have. But we have to make sure that vote means something. And the only way it'll mean something, and I don't know how we'll bring this about, but the only way you'll make that vote mean something is if our politicians start to represent us again, rather than what I call the man.
Would you never take a political stance again and stand as a political candidate?
I don't know. I don't know, because you see, the thing is that you constricted them. I know one local politician they're running, and they're bound and constricted by the rules of the party, if you know what I mean.
I get what you're saying.
And I'm too much of a maverick, and I'm too much of a free spirit, and I say what's in here. But I put forward my truth.
Yeah.
You know, what I've said here today, this is my truth, right?
Yeah.
As a 56-year-old man who's lived 10 lives, right? It's my truth. And I don't want to speak anybody else's truth. I don't want to speak anybody else's words. Yeah. I don't want to think anybody else's thoughts. Yeah. I want to think my own.
I mean, I get what you're saying, because I stood twice for the local elections, but then when I'm thinking about it, thinking, you'd be pulled in for anything you said, you know, and you have to work within these strict guidelines.
Yeah,
and so much legislation. You said such a thing on social media. Right, you have to explain yourself, and I suppose I get what you're saying.
But you see, that was the thing. You see, when the Right to Hate went viral and everything, and George Galloway got me on his show, right? And then I addressed the inaugural rally of the his new British Workers' Party in Birmingham. There were like these Jewish groups who were saying, "Oh, well, I was anti-Semitic," and they were trolling through tweets that I'd made like 10 years ago, where I was saying, you know, like Zionism controls banking and so on and so forth.
All right, yeah.
And I got back onto Twitter and I apologised for that. Do you know what I mean? Publicly, I apologised to them. I said, but what I tried to make them see was I've been on this like political journey. As I said before, I'm not the most. I'm a very intelligent man, but there's a difference between intelligence and education.
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't. You know, I left school with 2 O levels. You know, and so like I've been like trying to educate myself. You know, in certain things, and I admit I looked at far left sites, far right sites, and all that to try and find out about these things. Do you know what I mean? But it's like I said before, I don't just like stop in one place. I continue it, because I have a thirst for knowledge, and I have a thirst for understanding and all this. I've carried on searching for the truth and searching for answers, and trying to grow as a person and as an individual, so that you see that, like, you know, well, Zionists don't control banking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I apologise to them, because, you know, you can see that the likes of JP Morgan and Barclays Bank and Lloyds and all the other ones, they all, you know, that they're not Jewish or Zionist. And it's but you see, these people, they bring up things that you've tweeted 10 years ago, and you've moved on from that. You know, people don't. Well, like I say, I certainly haven't. But you move on from 10 years ago, or you should do.
That's the problem with social media. If you could have said something in a pub in 20 years ago, it's gone in the mist of time. But with social media,
well, I've said that before.
Electronic record,
see,
everything.
That's you know, I mean, you can get into the realms of conspiracy theory or whatever. But like, you know, at one time, you'd stand in a bus queue, you'd be in a queue for the butchers or the bakers or the fucking candlestick makers or whatever, and you'd be over the back fence, like it's like that typical Saturday night, Sunday morning kitchen sink drama thing with the two fat women with their air curlers in and the, you know what I mean, and they're having a crack over the back fence and all this, and that's how people used to exchange ideas and they used to have these like little conversations with people, right, that were just like throwaway conversations or whatever. Or expanding on trains of thought that they were going through whatever particular time. Now all those little throwaway conversations, right, that we used to have at the butchers or in the shops or at the bus stops or over the back fence, people are encouraged to put them online. You know, people are encouraged, and they're there then as a record. And then you see anybody who if you say something that like the powers that be disagree with, they'll just go through all your social media. Oh, he said this, he said this, he said this. It doesn't matter what context it was said in. No. It doesn't matter what point you were at in your life. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what mindset you were going, or if you were trying to on a voyage of discovery or whatever, right? You said that. You mean that, right? Because it said it there. It might have just been something you were thinking at the time. It's just like a fleeting thought. But then they're hanging you with it, if you see what I mean. And
you can't account with the text messages and social media statements for tone of voice. You could be saying something in a flippant manner, not seriously, but if it's written down, it's literal as it's written down.
How many times? I know that I've done it right, and I know that you've done it right. But how many times have you gone onto social media, right? Got into a bit of a spat with somebody, right? Said something like if you'd have said it to me face, I would have picked up on the fact that you would, by the intonation, that you were just having a crack or taking a piss or whatever, right? Yeah. But when it's in the written form, right, it comes across as being aggressive or whatever, right, or snide, and it gets you back up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so you can't judge with social media how something is said. No, there's no intonation there, is there?
There's not, and so it's always there's a record. Even if you delete it, it's kept in servers for years, kind of thing. All your Google searches, they keep them for 3 years or something like that. If I see what I've been leaking out, but it's one of them things. What do you think of this COVID-19 and all the kind of hoo-ha around it? Do you think it's a last push for the globalists? Do you think it's an actual virus?
Right, so I do believe it's a virus.
Okay.
I do believe, because my best two friends had it and nearly died of it.
Okay.
Right, and they were in a really bad way. And like Mags, this one time, she left me a message on my voicemail, and it didn't even sound like her. Right, and I was really. I mean, I was taking them like food parcels down. Like their house was a leper colony. Do you know what I mean? Taking food parcels down and bags of shopping and leaving it on the front door and all that. Having said that, right. So I believe that there is a virus, right, and I believe that it has killed people. But I think that the press have pumped it up to such massive levels, right, more than it ever should have been. Right, and as has been evidenced now, right, it's even on the BBC News and stuff, they're now saying that people who haven't actually died of COVID-19 have been lumped in with the figures, right? Yeah. So we'll never know now. So they say how many people have died? 40,000 people. Is that what they're saying now? I don't believe it's anywhere near that. Like my auntie Mary, she died of lung cancer in April, and the following day, Health England phoned a brother, my uncle Mike. And Health England, this doctor from Health England said, "Hello, Mr. Mcglade. What do you think your sister died of?" And he went, "Well, you're the doctor. You tell me." And he went, "Well, do you think she could have died of COVID-19?" And he went, "No, she had lung cancer, mate. She was dying of lung cancer." And my uncle Mike said it was like he felt as though they were trying to put words into his mouth. And like what I saw on the BBC News a few weeks ago, there'd been somebody who'd had COVID-19. Recovered from COVID-19 and then died in a car accident and was still registered the death as COVID-19. Yeah. Well, it's a disgrace. It's not true. No. Right? So I think that it's been overinflated, but why? Why have, because I always ask why, right? Why is the biggest question of all with anything, right? Why did the press pump it up to such massive things, right? I mean, let's just say The official thing is 40,000. Let's just say it was 30,000 people that have died, because they've already reduced it by 5,000 or 6,000, haven't they?
Yeah.
Let's just say it was 30,000 or 25,000 people that had died of COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
Not with it,
Related.
but not related or with it, but actually died from COVID-19.
Yeah.
Let's just say 25 to 30,000 people have died. Well, in a really bad flu season, 20,000 people would die in this country of the flu.
Yeah.
Right? Now you could argue, but you've got like you can have a jab for flu, and I accept that. But still, the figures are about the same, between a bad flu season and COVID-19. Should we have thrown our country £2 trillion pounds? Our country is now in debt. I think the fallout from COVID-19 is going to be absolutely humongous in terms of the mental health. I've spoken to a mental health nurse, and this was like back in April, May, and she said they've got like 10-year-old kids attacking their parents. Yeah. The amounts of alcohol, drug abuse, domestic violence, suicides, they're going through the fucking ceiling.
Yeah.
And it's like, once they can call it a recession if they want to. Yeah. But when your economy shrinks by over 20%, then it's a depression.
Yeah.
And they're saying that it's the worst since the 1920s or 30s when the depression was there. So it's a really serious situation, and I think that we should start to remove the fear. I mean, you can't listen. You could go. I could jump in my car. I've come down from Teesside today to come and do this podcast, right? And you could say, well, thousands of people die on the roads every year. What's stopping me from getting back in my car to drive to Teesside and having a car accident? You can't shelter yourself like that. You can't stop living your life because you think you're going to catch something and die. You can't live your life on the back foot all the time. Do you know what I mean? You've just got to live your life, haven't you? But also, fair enough, if there is a pandemic, we have had a pandemic, right? But if there is the virus there, then you've got to be responsible, haven't you? I mean, all the way through, I've been responsible. So the weekend, there was one weekend in just before we went into lockdown.
Okay.
And I'd been with my mates, my best mates, Andy and Mags, and I'd been down there at their house, and I'd ate at their house, and I drank at their house, and I'd give Mags a hug and everything. That was on the Friday. On the Saturday, I went on the piss, right, to the pub, and on the Sunday, I was back at their house having my tea and, eating and stuff like that. And Mags had a bit of a sniffle and all this, and that's all it was. Right, see you later, big kiss, hug, and all the rest of it, right? The following night, on the Monday, I was on my daughter's house, and my granddaughter, I always remember, I had my granddaughter on my knee, and I got a text message, right? And it was off Andy, and he said, you can't come down no more, because me and Mags have got the symptoms, right? Well, my ass fell out because I had my granddaughter on my knee, and I remember picking her up, right, and Laura said, what's the matter with you? And I said, Andy and Mags have got COVID-19. Oh, shit, right? So I put my granddaughter down, right? And she said, well, where are you going? I said, I'm going home. She said, well, it's too late now. You've had the kids on your knee. Put the granddaughter down, and I went home, and I didn't go back around my daughter's house apart from to take them some shopping or whatever around, right, for I think it was 18, 19 days. I thought in my own mind, this is supposed to be this is supposed to be infectious, right? Yeah. And so easily caught. I thought myself, and I've got asthma and I've got atrial fibrillation. I thought myself, I'm gonna get it, right? Yeah. So anyway, I cabined up for 19 days, didn't go and see my daughter hardly or anybody, right? Like I said, apart from take shopping round, didn't get a symptom, didn't get anything, never had anything, right? And so you ask yourself, and I was like this in the faces, kissing and Mags and all that ta-ra. So if it was that dangerous, right, how comes I never got it? You see, and people will throw their facts and figures. I'm not talking about, I don't care about anybody else's facts and figures. I'm talking about, I'm bothered about my facts and figures. I'm bothered about my experiences. And I was kissing 2 people and hugging 2 people and eating with 2 people and drinking with 2 people who had actually COVID-19, right? And I didn't catch it. Why didn't I catch it? Why didn't I? If it's so bad, why didn't I get it? I also think to myself, I remember when Boris Johnson put us in lockdown, you had Boris Johnson in the middle, one bloke here, and Chris Whitty, the health guy there, right? And he said, the good news is that like 99% of you who catch it will survive, will be okay. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if that's the case, if 99% of us are all right, are going to be all right, then why are you taking such draconian measures? There's like something that doesn't add up to me. I spoke to a Jewish friend of mine because we did the Right to Hate, the global version of the Right to Hate. And I felt as though that line about the Rothschilds, right, and about attacking that mindset that says you can't even question the Rothschilds, having an influence over banking when they're multi-billionaires. I thought that line can only be said by Jewish people, really. So I got a 2 or 3 Jewish friends of mine, and they did that line. And I had this conversation with one of my friends who was Jewish, and he was telling me about his mum. And he was saying that, like, when his mum was 6 years old, she lived in Nazi Germany, right? And her dad made the decision to put her on a boat. He said, and all she had was a change of clothes on and a dolly. And her dad put her on this ship to England, and she escaped Nazi Germany like that, right? Because we're still obviously letting people out the country at that point. And she never saw family again, right? But he's obviously talked to his mum, and she said that, like, there was like whispers going on. They didn't have mobile phones, and they didn't have social media, and they didn't have television, right? And they didn't have, all the downloads and all the rest of it, and all the news sources. Everything was like word of mouth. And they just knew, the Jewish community in Germany just knew that something wasn't right. That something wasn't adding up. And there were a lot of people, once again, it's divide and conquer, isn't it? A lot of people, they said, Jewish people were thinking, oh, well, look, they're not going to kill us. They're not going to kill us. They need us. They're not going to kill us. We're only going to this camp to do a bit of work, and, we're going to get like 3 meals a day. We'll be all right. Well, Then there was other people thinking, well, hang on, this doesn't add up. What's going on? And that's what my friend said. There was this like the thing that things weren't adding up, and it didn't seem right, and it didn't feel right to a lot of people. And that's how I feel with it. There are too many inconsistencies. There are too many questions, right? And for me personally, right, it doesn't feel right. There's just something that's not sitting right with me.
No.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So why have the press been like basically like vultures pushing every single death, right? And now that the deaths have gone right down, it's like they're not doing that anymore because they can't. So now they're pushing every single case, right? They're trying to keep the fear all the time, right? And that doesn't make any sense to me, because why would you want people to be afraid unless you wanted them in a state of flux? And then, of course, as I say, through my own experiences, if it was so infectious, right? If it was so highly infectious, then how comes I was kissing but without masks and all the rest of it, right? And I never caught it. If it was so bad, right? Why haven't I? You got your own chief medical, the government's own chief medical officer. At the start he said, if you catch it, you'll be good. You're going to, 99% you're going to be fine. Why have we pushed the world into such economic crisis, right? For something that 99% of us are gonna survive.
Do you think it's a last-ditch attempt for the globalists to usher in the new world order of a cashless society, mandatory vaccines, restricted movements?
I don't know. You see, that I don't know, right? I personally think that this, if you want to call them cabal, this 1%, this small elite, this globalism, the globalists, right? I think they've got an agenda, right, for control. I think they want control, right? And I had this massive argument with an Asian guy, right? he messaged me. He was really blunt. He saw the right to hate, and he messaged me, and he was demanding. And I said, "Oh, hang on a minute. I don't know you anything, mate. Right?" But I said, "Give me your phone number, and I'll phone you tomorrow, and we'll have the crack, and we'll discuss it, right?" But I said, "Don't start coming on here sending me a message saying, 'Do I agree with this?' and give me an explanation for that." I said, "Because I don't know you anything." Anyway, I went to the pub that night, 10:30, and I phoned him up, and he was all right at first, but we ended up in a right slagging match, right? Like, really going at it for like 2 hours in this pub, and everybody's in the pub, like, looking at me, and I was fucking screaming and shouting, and this Asian guy's going on at me. And then eventually, after about an hour and 20 minutes, right, we found common ground, right? And we both agreed that these global corporations, this globalism, right, has actually, through immigration, created a slave labour workforce, right, all over the place. And these globalists haven't pushed immigration for the good of people in other countries.
No.
They've done it to create a slave labour workforce, right, black and white, you know. And I think they have an agenda for that, you know. I think they have an agenda for divide and conquer, and for this, like, more or less like drone
society.
Yeah, workforce.
Yeah.
We're there just to serve them. You know, people say, what's the most highly prized commodity in the world? Is it oil? Is it gold? Is it coffee? No, it's human beings. You know, they've got a never-ending supply of them, haven't they? And they just do what they like, you know. And you've got, like, people, like, they're working now in this country for, like, maybe... Well, like, I know there's a car wash garage, right, up the road from where I am. And they bring these lads, I think they're from Iraq or Syria. And I think there's it's like an illegal immigration thing going on. They bring them from Doncaster in a van, right? From Doncaster up to where we are, which is like 2 hours and 20 minutes away, right? They're there for 7 o'clock in the morning. They work from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock, 7:30 at night. They put back in the van and they're back down to Doncaster, right? And then they do that every single day, 7 days a week, right? And they're working for something like £2 an hour, right? They work for £2 an hour. Absolute exploitation, right? And then, of course, you see, but they're prepared to work for that because in their country they probably can't get that, you know, and so they're exploiting these poor people. I read an article in the Morning Star about the time of Brexit, about 4 years ago, and the article in the Morning Star said that the EU's or this country's immigration, the EU's immigration policy, you know, of open door immigration was actually racist, because what the EU was actually doing was it was destroying the economies of some of the poorest countries in Europe, right, which are forcing then, like, economic migrants to leave their own homelands where they prefer to work, but they haven't got any choice. They've got to get out because their economies are knackered. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that is racist in a way. And the EU was supporting and backing every single, like, illegal intervention and war in the Middle East. So there was, like, all the refugees as well that were created. You know, so they created all this wave of migration through economic means and through war. And then these people are coming over to this country or coming to France or whatever, and they're all being exploited by unscrupulous, especially with this country, unscrupulous employers who've been allowed to get away with murder because for years the trade union movement under both the Tories and Labour, right, have eroded the trade union movement down to being nothing more than a lapdog. I mean, Thatcher obviously started it, and the Tories brought in all this anti-trade union legislation, but when Labour took over under Blair, and the Labour Party were in power for 14 years, they never reversed one single bit of anti-trade union legislation, which is a disgrace when you think that the Labour Party was born from the trade union movement and the Tolpuddle martyrs and the Chartists and all the rest of it, you know. And you see it, right, and you just realise, right, that's what's going on. We're all being made slaves.
Yeah.
And so that for me is the agenda of these globalists, this globalism, right? I don't think for 1 minute that they're encouraging immigration because they care about people, and they don't give a fuck about anybody, right? All they care about is this and control and power, right? Now, Do I think that agenda goes further than that to mandatory vaccinations or a cashless society? I don't know about mandatory vaccinations, but as for a cashless society, I mean, you listen, we're all there. You can see it, can't you? Right? You can see it going around. It's been going on for years, more and more. I mean, I fell through the floor. I was in London last year, and somebody's paying for a pint with a fucking watch. It was like something from it's like Star Trek. Do you know what I mean? I know what's it all about.
Space 19.
You know, then you got adverts on the television. PayPal, the new currency. Well, there's no currency there. All these is numbers and figures. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can see that the people
Apple Pay, you pay with your fucking phone, point your phone into fucking
you can see that they've been trying to get rid of currency for some time now. And that has actually accelerated due to the pandemic. You know, a lot of places they won't take cash now.
Bullshit, isn't it?
You know, but like I say, is that part of the overall picture of the agenda? I don't know. About mandatory vaccinations. Once again, I don't know. I wouldn't personally. I would if I'm not ill.
Yeah.
Or if I'm not poorly, then I'm not going to have anybody sticking a needle in my arm. Because you don't know what's going to be in it or anything, do you?
There's talks of microchips in this one.
Well, you know, it's
kind of stuff.
I think at the moment we live in a scary time.
Yeah.
But I also think we live in an exciting, optimistic time.
All right. Yeah.
And I think that like, you know, it's all there to be fought for, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's all there to be fought for. If you don't want mandatory vaccinations, if you want more truth, if you want to know, you know, what's going on, if you don't like the way the country's going, now is the time to stop these globalists. It's for me, it's the globalism, it's the globalists that are doing this, you know, and they control our politics. They got rid of Jeremy Corbyn, who was an anti-globalist. For the moment, you see, I always said that Corbyn and Trump were the same, really.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd seen certain articles in the Guardian. Emily, what's her name? Who Labour MP, who called the people in Essex white van man. Emily, I can't remember her second name.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Anyways, so I think she said that like Trump and Corbyn were the same, in as much as they're anti-globalist, anti-EU, anti-NATO, you know, and I thought to myself, yeah, they are. And I noticed that when Corbyn got in 2015, I think it was 2015 or 16, 2015, I think he had 2 leadership challenges straight away. And he was like Trump in as much as he was a wild card, wasn't he? You know, they had to have a token socialist in there, right? But they didn't expect him to get in, but he got in, right? Yeah. Because the rank and file and the members of the Labour Party voted for him, and he got in. But from the moment he got in, he was smiggered, he was hounded, he was attacked, right?
Anti-Semitic,
and he was all that, right? And then of course they had 2 leadership challenges, and he beat all them, and then the smears carried on, and then in 2017, when they nearly won the election, it all came out that like basically they plotted to throw the general election, so he didn't get in. And then of course the biggest thing was in 2019 when they called the general election again because the Labour Party were like trying to stop Brexit, right? Then they called for a second referendum, which was the death knell of the Labour Party. No matter what anybody says, right, the Labour Party lost that election because they called for a second referendum on Brexit, right?
His U-turn on Brexit.
Well, yeah, but he was forced at knife point to do it because he was anti-EU all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And that was the thing, you see. When you got 61% of Labour constituencies voting Leave, don't you think it's a bit suicidal to go and call for a second referendum? And in actual fact, like last year, right, we had the referendum in 2016, but last year you had another 3 referendums, and each one turned out like in favour of leaving the EU. Because first of all, you had the EU elections, right, which were an absolute disaster for Labour and the Tories, especially the Labour Party. Then you had the council elections, right?
Yeah.
Where Labour got absolutely hammered because it called for a second referendum. I mean, Teesside, where I am, I don't think we got... you got to understand, Teesside is probably one of the most uncontestable Labour seats ever, and now they haven't got a Labour council. I think they've got 1 Labour council in the whole of Teesside, right? Absolutely decimated. All because of Brexit. And then, of course, you had the general election, which was a landslide to the Tories, right?
Yeah.
And it was all because of Brexit. And, of course, that's how they got rid of Corbyn. So the globalists, right, who were pushing all that, got rid of him. They tried to do it with the referendum result in 2016, because obviously the EU is a massive globalist, like, you know, I call it knocking shop. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they control that, but the people of this country stuck up for themselves and stood up to it, and it was like 1-1. Now the biggest one, of course, is the American election, and you just know that the same things that Corbyn went through over here, Donald Trump's gone through the same things since he became president in 2016.
What they're trying to do now is they're saying through COVID-19 people can't go out and vote, so it has to be like a postal vote, which they can rig like fuck.
Shit, you can't do that.
You know, it's
you really can't do that. You can't do that. I don't think you can anyway.
It's one of these things, but Mr. Chris Mcglade, it's been a pleasure for you to come down. But I have to tell you something. You might go for your tea with Eddie Izzard, but I once had a fish and chip meal with Stu Francis from Crackerjack. That's a true story. You know, it's not just you on rub shoulders with fucking celebrities.
No, you don't know, right? Jimmy's now the reason I laughed there, right, is not because what he said was funny, because it was shit, right? But because when he said it, I looked down, right, and all he's got on is a pair of Adidas Sambas, right, and a fucking pair of shorts. Look at the state of that.
Newsreaders, don't worry. You know, we've done all the fucking serious, heavy stuff now. We can have a fuck about. I've got back on my mark now. You know, I'd just like to thank, if you don't mind, Chris, this week's supporters of the show, which is Liam Carty and his Nana Carty, Richard Carn, I think it's Richard Carser, he lives with them. He's always scrounging food off them and he doesn't pay his way, but he donated. Skinny Bob, Patrick Malloy, Brendan Moss, CI5 Retro Gamer, thank you, Rubber Dub, Ian Frost, Padge Guitar, Chris Number Plate, David Jones, Roger King hasn't contributed. We still owe you a T-shirt. We'll get round to sending you that out, Roger. But thank you very much. We'll put all Chris's links under this video. These lovely T-shirts, Chris is selling these.
Well, this is a prototype, but I am selling my working class man. I've got the working class brand of T-shirts now. I've got working class man, working class bloke, working class LGBT, working class woman, working class babe, working class nana, working class mam. It was your mam, wasn't it? Not your mum, your mam.
Have you got one called working class gobshite? Because I'd buy that.
Working class fat twat.
The last that's true actually. The last guest left these. I'm selling them 20 pence each if you want to buy them, kind of thing. Just to raise any money for the channel. Have I anything I need to cover? Please like, subscribe, and donate to this channel. Click the fucking bell. It's in one of the corners.
And I've got to say to you, right, you've got to listen. Let me have the final word, right. At the end of the day, I've known Jimmy for a few years now.
I've been to your house.
I've been in my house. I've cooked him breakfast, right. I've given him oral sex, and the thing is, he's I know he's been maligned in the local press because of his outspoken humour and the way he carries on sometimes, but he's a good heart. He's got a good heart. He's a good man. And he's got the best interests of this area at heart, so support him. He's only a normal working class Wigan lad trying to make his way, as we all are. So
I'm just mentally ill. I can't help that. You know what I mean? He's
a manic depressive, but all comedians are manic depressives, aren't they? You know.
We are. Thank you very much, Mr. Mcglade, for coming down.
You're welcome. God bless
working
you.
class man. Chris Mcglade, ladies and gentlemen. Check when the world opens up again and there's a theatre with more than 2 fucking chairs you can sit on. Check out Forgiveness, his play. Check out Right to Hate, his poem. It's not a play, it's a fucking show. Check out Right to Hate, his poem.
I want some pie. I want some pie.
Well, we've got some in the fridge for you.
I like pie. I want humble pie.
There's nothing wrong with that. So it's Mr. Chris Mcglade. All his links, his T-shirts, back you can actually buy pairs of his used underpants as well. I have some in my house. But thank you very much, Mr. Mcglade. Take care.
Pleasure. Thank you. Peace. How do? My name's Chris Mcglade, and I'm a comedian from Redcar near Middlesbrough in the northeast of England. In 2017, I wrote a poem called The Right to Hate. It echoed my frustrations at globalism and what I believe is its agenda for divide and conquer and ultimately control. It also echoed my frustrations at political correctness, which I feel is a tool of globalism used to silence and stifle free speech and expression. I called it The Right to Hate, but it's not about hate at all. I feel as though constantly I'm being told what I have to like and haven't to like, what I have to say and haven't to say. And it's just more or less like I want the right to hate back. I feel as though the right to dislike or the right to disagree or the right to hate has been taken away from me. And even though I don't want it, I want that right back. I don't hate any man, not even the man who murdered my father. I forgave the man who murdered my father in 2011, so I don't hate anybody. I just want to have that right to hate, to disagree, to dislike, and be able to vocalise that back again. In 2018, I recorded the poem and I put it on YouTube, and I just left it there. In 2019, the poem was uploaded from YouTube on my YouTube channel to Facebook by a man from Newcastle, and it went viral, and in 2 weeks it had something like 800,000 hits, and I was overcome with that. This year, in 2020, in June, just last month, I noticed that the poem was starting to be looked at again, and within 4 weeks, millions of people all across the world had watched my poem. I was absolutely inundated with messages and friend requests on Facebook and Twitter from people all across the world who resonated with my frustrations at globalism and our freedoms of speech and expression being taken away. So I had the idea to record a global version of The Right to Hate, and I give lines to people all across the world, all across the globe, to read, and that's what you're about to see now. This isn't about people wanting to hate, it isn't about people wanting to dislike, it's about people wanting that right to be given back to them and to be able to vocalise what they actually feel or think in their hearts. That's what the poem is all about. It's about people coming together now in unity to rise up against the division and the segregation that we've all had to endure and suffer for so many years. I give you the right to hate.
You tell me what I can't say. You censor what I can.
You say I'm offensive.
Because I believe my eyes. But I say...
I see a woman, not a man.
You say I'm thick and racist.
Not wanting to be a part of a rich man's club in Europe.
Or a globalist new world order with no soul.
Or caste. Or hat.
You throw at me the slave trade.
You tell me
my 4-year-old grandson is to blame.
You point your branding.
Intolerant, accusing fingers.
And you tell me to hang
my head in shame.
I'm free to have opinions.
As long as they fall in line
with yours.
I can fly my banners.
High and proud.
As long as you support that cause.
You have to be right all the time.
Yours is the only way.
I have to like the things you like.
Be they black,
trans, left or gay.
It makes no difference.
If I tell you
I'm not the things for which you accuse.
Because once you've made up
your closed off minds,
I'm always gonna lose.
I have black friends.
So you're still racist?
Homophobic. I've shared beds with gay men.
I'm an anti-Semite. But the Rothschilds is the richest banking family in the world.
And that's got nothing to do with them being Jewish, but everything to do with them being multi-billionaires.
They really do influence the dollar, the pound, and the yen.
You sip your Pinot Grigio
in trendy bars down in the smoke.
Looking down your noses with loathsome contempt.
At billions of working class folk.
I've came here to this old blast furnace
to tell you that
you have had your time.
Because the winds of change are blowing.
And the bells of freedom soon will chime.
Because my class,
my fucking class,
are waking up and stirring.
And we're going to peacefully attack.
We're going to breach
those PC walls of segregation.
The divided gay street.
White and black.
I have no malice in my heart.
I don't judge people on their sex,
creed, or race.
I don't speak ill of absolute
cunts behind their backs.
Not even the bloke who murdered my dad.
And I just tell them to their face.
So do all you branding liberals
who won't allow debate.
I hate no man or woman.
I just want the right to hate it.
I want the right to hate.
Like I want to have the right to love.
I want to like and dislike
what I want to like and dislike.
And to be able to vocalize it properly.
I'm not responsible for slavery.
And I'm not taking any blame.
Because the white privilege built on black slavery you say I enjoy.
Well, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Oprah Winfrey,
Rihanna, Floyd Mayweather,
Alicia Keys, Jamie Foxx,
Barack Obama. Pero all enjoy the same.
Beyonce spent $87 million on a house just through shaking that ass.
Me and our lass sit at home
lamenting about ways to pay the fucking gas.
And I don't see too much white privilege
in a system that lets East European immigrants
or wounded soldiers live in
cardboard boxes.
Why do Black Lives Matter?
And progressive liberals fail to see.
Not all white people live in stately homes.
Chasing fucking foxes.
And I'm not homophobic, transphobic, racist,
or any phobic, you see.
I don't fear sex
or race or gender.
I just won't bow down to your PC.
Don't confuse my use of slang with
racism or bigotry.
Don't confuse my rejection of your shite
with spite.
Don't naturally assume I'm thick and racist.
Because I'm northern working class. I'm not.
I'm articulate, sharp, and bright.
And I will not
walk a minefield every time I open my mouth.
Speak.
And I will not apologise for things that I've
glibly said or spoken.
Tongue in cheek.
So shape up.
I'll fuck off with your madness.
Because I aim to
bring it down.
I aim to bring working class people, all people, together.
Muslim, Christian,
white and brown.
I'm going to bring those globalist walls of Jericho
crashing around your
brainwashed, progressive,
liberal feet.
And I'm going to blow my loving, inclusive, un-PC fanfare.
And you're communist, fascist,
capitalist, socialist, left, right.
Catholic, Protestant,
Muslim, Christian,
black, white,
male, female, gay, straight,
leave, remain,
Republican, Democrat.
Afraid of COVID-19. Unafraid of COVID-19.
North, South, divides I will defeat.
You've divided us and conquered us.
Way too long.
You've taken the piss out of us. You've laughed at us.
And share the benefits out to all.
Well, I've come here to this
northern working class shrine
in my town red car to tell you.
It is time for your shit.
To fucking stop.
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 Stop. Stop.
Stop.
Stop. Stop.